Dave, your magazine is called Moments Matter. And when I heard the title of this magazine, I thought about the moment you must have had when your plane crashed on the Hudson River. In a miracle, really, that so many lives were saved, everybody on the plane. So take me back to that moment on the plane when you knew something was wrong.
Thank you, Amber. And yes, I knew something was wrong when I heard an explosion, which was about a minute into the flight. But I didn't think too much of it. I thought, I fly like you fly a lot. Planes lose engines, that happens. So you just go back and get into the plane. That's exactly what I was thinking until he crossed over, started approaching the George Washington Bridge in New York. And all of a sudden he says, "This is your captain, brace for impact." And that's the moment. Not only I think everybody, all the passengers, at least on the plane, knew that this is not going to probably end out pretty well because all you can see in front of you is water. And the only thing I can remember from a plane going into water is not good. So that's the moment I realized that this is probably not going to end up very well, and I better get some things straight really quick.
We've all heard the story of what actually happened. You're the first person I've ever spoken to who was actually on that plane. I can imagine there were many moments where you saw leaders among all the passengers and the crew and people who really took charge. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of leadership in that moment?
Yeah, I think that's exactly one of the reasons I think this ended up the way it did because it wasn't just the crew; they did a fabulous job. I'm forever grateful. But other people had to step up because one of the things you learn when you go through a situation like this is the people who give the most certainty in those uncertain times are the ones that become leaders. It doesn't matter if I tell people, it doesn't matter if you're the CEO of a company or if you're a janitor. If you give certainty to somebody when in that uncertain time, they're going to look to you to follow. So I think that happened on a number of fronts, not only with myself, but some other people likewise. That we were, when you stay calm, and when my first principle I talk about is calm in chaos. You got to keep your head. And I think the people who kept their heads and could give clear directions to people when they needed it were the leaders on that plane. And I know of a couple that I know personally that handled things extremely well. And hopefully I did the same thing.
What was your role during that
Yeah.
time? Because I imagine every single person on board that plane did serve some type of role during those moments and the rescue as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. My game plan, Amber, because I played athletics and sports, I always had a game plan was aisle up out. If I survived, I got to get to the aisle, get up and get out the door. That was my game plan. But, what changed for me is when I got to the aisle, I executed step number one, but I heard my mom start speaking to me. And, one of the things my mom would tell me when I was a child is if you do the right thing, God will take care of you. And I grew up outside a small town outside of Cincinnati, Ohio, where everybody took care of everybody. Everybody knew everybody. So I went towards the back of the plane to see if anybody needed help. I climbed over the seats, got behind the last person, and things were moving pretty quick in the back of the plane, but the water was chest level deep because the back of the plane was actually submerged. And a lot of people don't know that because they see the front of the plane view, they don't see the side of the plane view. So the water was extremely deep. So, and people say, well, why were you managing the right door? Where was the crew? Well, the flight attendant who was supposed to manage that door had her leg sliced because a piece of metal came up from underneath the plane during the impact. So they took her out the front. So I managed the right door, and I was inside the plane for over 7 minutes, waist deep in 36-degree water, because somebody needed to manage what was going on the side. And I, as you know, my background I had some leadership roles with Tony Robbins and other people. I was sort of just took it upon myself to say, at least I'm okay. I can at least hopefully give direction and do something. So that's how I stepped up and handled the right door, which was a 10F on the right side of the plane.
What happens in the days after the crash?
Yeah.
Because again, we hear a lot about the moment that people knew something was wrong. We hear about the moment that people were rescued, but then all of a sudden, you don't hear about the stories about the days after because that must have also been a really difficult experience for a lot of people.
I'm glad you asked that question 'cause very rarely does anybody ever ask that. And, the next day when I got back, things were very hectic, right? I mean, it's, and, you get to the airport and you're at the airport. Now media is coming at you, nonstop. And now you're just trying to get back to normal life. But for me, my daughter had a varsity basketball game that night. So we were just going to go to the game. And when we got to the game, CBS showed up at the game to follow me. and it was like chaos, right? I mean, here I am just trying to be with my family, trying to get some sense of normalcy, and all of a sudden, I got CBS following me all over town. And so it was like that for a couple of weeks. I was getting constantly, called about that, and I was trying to do my job because I was asked to go to Michigan the next week. I didn't get any time off, and I still had my family because the family I was going through their thing. See, a lot of people forget about the families. All the families went through their whole all traumatic experience likewise, and you got the media. So it was very chaotic for a number of months for me, and I think for a lot of passengers they had a very similar situation. Some just regressed. And one of the things I think that their companies did really well is they gave them time off so they could regress. My company asked me to go to Michigan the next week, so I was back in the fray within 48 hours.
I have a lot of comments about that because that seems grossly unfair. But I do want to say that you kind of turn that experience into something different. You're no longer at that
That's
company.
right.
You started speaking. We met quite a few years ago here in Toronto. You started speaking about leadership and that experience. So, how did you turn what was such a traumatic experience into, I think, what can be defined as an opportunity to share with thousands of people? How did you actually make that switch?
It wasn't my game plan. It really wasn't the game plan, but I'll tell you, here's the backstory. So the only person, Amber, that called me that night in the hospital was Tony Robbins. It wasn't my manager. It wasn't anybody from the company. They didn't even call my wife. It was him. And and if you go out on YouTube, you can actually see it. He did a YouTube about that interview we did. But the last thing we got off, he said, "Listen, when you get to LA, call me. I want to talk to you." So I was going to LA for all these TV shows, Dr. Phil and all these shows, and so I called him, and we spent 3 hours on the phone. Now, if someone's willing to give you 3 hours on the phone, right? That's a lot of time, especially someone of that. But he was giving me the life lessons, tell me expectations of what I should be expecting. But he also said it's time to step into it. This is your opportunity. Go for it. Right? You have a story to tell now, and don't waste this opportunity. But how do you do it? Right? And so that's what I had to figure out. But I knew based on what happened, I just referenced, because when I got back to Charlotte on the 16th of January, I went by the office because I didn't even know they knew I was in a plane crash. I was on company time. And when I went in, I had these sweats on because I lost all my clothes and everything else. So I let everybody know I survived. And my first thing, my manager said, "You're going to Michigan next week, right?" And two of my kids were with me. And my girls were looking like, "Dad, what are you going to do?" I'm like, "I'm going to Michigan next week." And that's when I knew, Amber, that I didn't have what's called the four freedoms. I didn't have freedom of time, money, mission, or relationships. And I knew I had to make a move, and then Tony reinforced that, right? So that's how it really started. But yeah, I started speaking, at the churches and things, so that's all I knew until, I had a big experience at a very large event, and all of a sudden, that's how I sort of figured out I've got a message to tell, and I need to do this in a bigger way.
I do want to say, just full disclosure, that
Yeah,
you and I both share experiences working with Tony Robbins. And he also showed up at a really interesting time in my life where totally different.
yeah,
But I was working in a job where I didn't feel I had any of those freedoms that you
yeah.
mentioned. And I felt kind of trapped, right? And I started working with him, and he gave me a great opportunity for my now partner, Chris, and I to come and do some work for him and travel. And he kind of shows up at the right time.
Yeah.
So,
It's amazing how that works, isn't it? Just the right
yeah,
person shows up.
yes,
Yeah,
absolutely. So, from that point, when you start speaking about leadership to audiences, I'm so curious about this because I've been speaking for a long time. But my talk, I think, is not a highly emotional talk. I'm talking about technology in the future, and it's a little bit detached from the human experience in some respects. What you're talking about, I think, is a different conversation. What was it like going to audiences and answering those questions and kind of rehashing what was obviously a very traumatic experience over and over again?
yeah. I tell you, I often would get very emotional because it would trigger something, right? I would get triggered, but what I realized is people really wanted the question. And I go back. This is the question I still get 16 years later. I started day two all the way now is, how'd you get back on a plane? And what I realized what people are asking, Amber, is how did you bounce back? How did you do it? Because so many
Mm.
people are going through uncertainty. How did you lead yourself to be able to do something like that, right? Because one of the secrets about this whole thing is many people from that day still haven't got back on a plane.
Yeah.
And, I don't blame them for it. They had to do what they have to do. But I think that's the biggest question people always wanted to find out from me is, how did you do it? How did you bounce back and then turn it into something that now you're around the world and doing your things and helping other people do it? And I think that's really the big question people want answered is because everybody's going through uncertainty.
So what do you say to people when they ask you that question?
I say, there's a lot of, and I actually did my TED talk at Queen's University up in Kingston about this. I had four universities come to me. I said I wanted to do it in Canada because number one, when I heard the suicide rate in Canada was out of control, it's the same time I was hearing about the suicide rate in the U.S. military. I'm like, I was like appalled. Like, how's this going on? So I really want to share some of the strategies that I did and how did I bounce back and how did I turn it around. And, one of the ways is about the meaning you attach to something produces the emotion of your life. And I want to help people understand whatever meaning you're attaching is how you're feeling right now. So if I can help you change or reframe that meaning, then I can help you change the direction of your life. But one of the first things that I did, and this is actually the reason I started speaking, and it goes back to our friend Tony Robbins, because one of the things Tony told me in this 3-hour conversation, and this is one of the things he does on stage, so it's nothing private, is that, one of the things he does extremely well is help people get out of their body. See, a lot of people, unfortunately, when they go through a challenging situation, is they keep talking in their head. Their internal dialogue just keeps knocking them down and stack. So it gets so deep they can't do anything about it. So the one strategy that he taught me and I've done and I help other people with is let's get it out of your body. Just get it out. So I started speaking to get it out of my body. And what I was noticing is every time I did it, not only did I affect people, but it helped me grow likewise. It helped me be able to have more certainty to be able to say, you know what, I can do this, and it gave me certainty to do it. So I think that those are really the two key steps I share people first on how, number one, you can turn it around, but second, how you can start leading yourself first, because you got to lead yourself first, because no one will buy into you unless you give them certainty.
It is also true that when you speak about certainty, I think the world has changed so much, even since that time. We're talking 16 years, and we've gone through a pandemic, another experience where people were forced to deal with uncertainty in their
Yep.
lives. Right now, I think it's true to say, and this kind of comes back a little bit to the work I do and some of the things that we talk about on this show. Artificial intelligence is impacting people in a significant way. People are turning to their phones. They're losing human contact. I mean, there's some good things that tech is doing, and I certainly talk about those. Some bad things as well. What do you think about this moment in time
Yeah.
that we're in right now?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think the biggest question right now is how's AI going to affect everybody, right? How's it going to, why A, do I need to use it? And B, how's it going to affect? And I, like you, I was sort of seeing this trend and I was in technology for 38 years. And I know the companies that I were with, it all shifted that direction right now, right? So, uh, I always go back to the one thing that always I did well at, I think, and I developed a strategy that all of a sudden I just realized how to do it. It was, I call it the A to I strategy, access to influence. And all I really did is take the AI acronym and how I used back then, it was not AI. Maybe it was. I didn't even know what I was using, but getting information through that to be able to get access to build influence with somebody. Because it always comes back to what we talked about a little before, is authentic interactions. How you have to, because people still buy from people. People still deal with people. And a lot of these companies that I talk to, like you probably interview likewise, they move to AI agents and things like that because they think they can reduce costs or give better customer service and all this. And maybe it's true. But I think, and I don't know about you, but when I have a question I want to answer, I want to talk to somebody, right? I don't want to talk to an AI agent because they'll go through whatever they do, go through their list of things. But if I get to somebody's heart, it's like, I need help. And then I think it really always comes back to authentic interactions.
It is interesting too that in this day and age of social media, you're publishing a magazine.
Yeah.
I love print as a format. I think it's really powerful. But I would love to hear a little bit more about why you decided that was right for you right now.
Thank you for that. I never thought that I'd be a publisher of a magazine. I'm not Oprah. I'm not, Joanna Gaines. I tell people I'm not somebody big that's going to be in Walmart with thousands of magazines. But what I realized is I did a podcast for a year, Amber, and every week for a year, and I did it all myself. And it was a lot of work. I mean, there's a lot of work to do, especially by yourself. So I sunsetted that. So I didn't really have any media going on. And someone approached me and shared with me a strategy on how I could use magazines as a medium to get to people and help other people share their story, their Moments Matter stories. But how do you do it? And I said, well, they said, well, why don't you try a magazine? Do people still read magazines? I said, I still read magazines, but I'm in my 60s. I grew up in magazines, right? So what I realized is people love magazines. They can either download or they love that touch of a magazine and the look of a magazine. So I started this magazine to really first just share some of my stories, but I've realized is I can share other people's moment stories on how they got to where they're at and really impact people. And all of a sudden we're getting people all over the world reading this magazine. So I actually, I'm using it in not a replacement of a podcast, but sort of in relation to a podcast, whereas this is my medium that I'm using, where other people are using a podcast or internet radio. So that's how it really came about. And now we're in our third year, and I'm so honored that you're in our summer edition of a Moments Matter magazine, because it's, as I shared with you earlier, the editor of my magazine said right now your article sort of tapping into a lot more people than some of the other folks. So thank you for your contribution.
Well, I am very happy to be part of it, and really appreciate you including me as well. I wanted to ask, looking forward,
Yep.
because you've done so much work out there talking about leadership and helping people through these challenging times, getting people to think about those moments that matter. I don't think your story ever gets old. First of all, you survived something that I think makes you very unique. Most people have not gone through an experience like that. Secondly, a lot of people are afraid of flying. I mean, that's
Yeah.
just a reality of our time, myself included. I wouldn't say it's my absolute favorite thing to do. When you look forward and you think about the evolution of some of your work, where do you want to take things?
Yeah. Thank you very much. Because one of the things that's exactly what we're doing right now is how can we impact more people, not only with the story. The story is a story, but how can I use how I did this to impact other people so they can become an entrepreneur or do something what we talked about earlier, have those four freedoms: freedom of time, money, mission, and relationships. And what that really means is I think everybody wants those four freedoms. I think everybody wants that. And the question is, how do you get there? How do you do that? And I just figured out, it took me 3 years. I'm not going to say it was an overnight sensation. It took me about 3 years to figure out the strategy on how to do that. So I did that. So the direction we're taking the company now is really how to scale your business and or life to get these four freedoms. And I've built a framework, and basically I just put all these pieces together that I've learned to a framework on how I did it. And that's what we're going to be teaching at our upcoming summit in Charlotte on November 12th through the 15th is for the first time, I'm going to share this framework on how you can not only get to freedoms, but how to really scale your life and business to be able to do this in this way. And so I'm really excited to do this in the direction of the company. And one of the things that I've learned through my life is to really be able to grow and be able to impact, you got to simplify. So we're simplifying everything we're doing right now. We've gotten rid of a lot of things we have been doing. So you know what? This is all we're going to be doing now is helping people who want to have those freedoms, show them a framework how to do it, how to scale and to do it effectively. And that's the direction we're taking.
I think one of the things I really love about your work is that I think a lot of people miss moments that matter in their lives. And when I say they don't see them as opportunities to learn, they see them in, little boxes of maybe just pain
Yep.
or, something that isn't necessarily a lesson. How do people look at these moments in their lives differently to be able to use them to kind of move them forward?
Thank you. I think one of the things I realized after the miracle on the Hudson is that every moment in your life is there for a reason and a purpose. Everyone is. And you may just gloss over it, and a lot of us do. I mean, I glossed over it, but let's look at your situation. When as we looked at your article, Moments Matter magazine, You were doing, outside doing work at 8 years old that no one would ever really want to do. That moment influenced you. Now, at that moment, you're probably saying, I really don't want to do this. It's horrible. I hate it. But that influenced you in a direction. So what I realized, and what I help other people realize is that situation that was really hard in your life, something happened, was there to help build your strength, help you build your, what I call resilience, right? To be able to bounce back and be able to get it done. So don't take these moments lightly. And one of the things I think you and I shared a little earlier is, if someone gives you their time, and to be able, and they want to share something with you, don't discard it. It may not impact you right now, but 10, 15 years from now, all of a sudden you're thinking, maybe that was there for this reason right here. And I shared an experience when I was 12 years old that impacted me that day on the Miracle on the Hudson. And if that hadn't happened to me when I was 12, I may not have been able to do what I was done. And what happened is my mom and dad made me learn how to swim. But that was one skill that I had, which was great. But when I was 12, I was in the Boy Scouts, and we had to do something, and we had to get across a river to get to the next activity to do it. And yeah, most of the guys and were walking over the bridge, but few of us just jumped in the river and swam because we could. And I said, was that the moment? I look back and said, was that the moment that gave me the certainty to have on the Miracle on the Hudson day where I had to swim for my life? That I knew I already swam in the river once. So I could have certainty that I could do it again. And I said, that was a key moment when I was 12. But who would ever thought about that one moment in Boy Scouts, that was going to serve me. So I tell people, don't gloss over. This moment happened, and you may not like it happen, may not like the way it happened, but it'll serve you somewhere in your life.
Absolutely. And I have to apologize because I didn't realize that there was swimming involved in this rescue. I think a lot of people thought, okay, the plane landed and people got off onto boats, but
No,
that
I had to
wasn't the
swim for
case.
my life. I had to, because the plane was sinking. So I jumped in and swam to the end of the wing. And I tell people I was the longest 15-yard swim of my life because the water was 36 degrees. I was fully clothed. And one thing that people don't know, and I do share, is they had jet fuels in the water. And that's why I wear glasses. Because when I got back, I was having trouble seeing. Went to the optometrist, and he found black spots all through my eyes. He thinks I got jet fuel stuck back in there, which cost something. He gave me glasses. So those little things like that happen, people don't even realize. But but you do what you have to do when your life's on the line, right? You just have to do what you got to do.
Absolutely. I just want to thank you for joining me today and sharing that story and sharing the work that you're also doing
Thank
today. But for people who want to read more and follow you, where is the
you.
best place for them to go?
Well, first, I love them to go to LinkedIn because this is where we really share our new content every week. Dave Sanderson on LinkedIn, but really just one of the things that I do is if you want to read Amber's story and the other people's stories, go to my website, davesandersonspeaks.com. Go to where it says books and magazines, and you can download a free copy right now of the magazine. And I would encourage you to do that because what you're going to find, you'll probably find somebody you can relate to very quickly. To someone's maybe got a very similar backstory that you have, and say, you know what, this person was able to accomplish this, and this is how they did it, and this was a moment trigger. Maybe I can do it too. And I'll give you a quick example. I interviewed a lady. She's from Vietnam, and I met her through my connections with the military. I do a lot with the special operations in the United States. But long story short, her family was, basically flown out of Vietnam during the war. They went to a camp. They put them in a camp. But the key thing about that story is her mom had no money. Her dad was fighting the Viet Cong over in Vietnam. But there was a lady who took interest in her. Her name was Hedy Lamarr. She was a Hollywood star, and she showed her mother how to do nails. And her mother opened a salon in Los Angeles, which then grew, which gave her name is Van Delon, the inspiration as a young Vietnamese girl to be an entrepreneur and start her own thing. So these are the stories you don't know about, which, you know what? I think everybody's got something in their backstory that maybe they need to maybe just sort of say, you know what? I can do that too. And so I'd encourage them to go to davesandersonspeaks.com and check out, and especially Amber's article. I'm really proud of her article, and it looks great in the magazine. FYI, the pictures look outstanding. So
Excellent. Well, I again really appreciate you taking the time. And I
thank you.
think in this age of technology and artificial intelligence, work that you're doing is especially important. We all have to learn how to lead during this challenging time. We all have to lean into authenticity, really excel as humans, especially alongside some of these machines that are coming into our personal and work lives. So, really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amber.